2 o'clock. I'm James Melton, the Chief Ambassador for the Mars Society, and this is July 11th, 2023. I can't believe we're approaching the end of the first quarter of the century. We need a good Raptor engine behind our mission so that we can get it into orbit. And our mission statement is the Ambassador Program is designed to serve as a team of professional people dedicated to elevating public awareness of the vision we have of landing humans on Mars within this decade and begin settling the red planet. And notice we put a timeline in there within this decade. It's not someday. Someday is not a day of the week. So we want to make sure that we're on track with that. And we may need the Raptor engine to make it happen. All right. Thanks, Roger Gilbertson, so much for Linda Schweitzer. I see you're on board. Beautiful.
No, I think there's going to be a lot more excitement.
Roger, thank you so much for the job you did last month on the Ambassador Briefing Call. Really appreciate your support. And Dr. Robert Zubrin and Hope Zubrin, our fearless leader, went to Ukraine and actually started a Mars Society emphasis on the Mars Society chapter over there with a gentleman named, I believe it's Sergei Danilenko or Lake Mav. I'm not sure which one that is, but we were in touch today, this morning.
It's the first one, Jim.
Or is it?
Sergei, and the first one. Yeah, the other one is Sergei Yakimov, who's our assistant director at the MDRS.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. I thought I got it right the first time, but I wanted to cover the bases. But we were in touch this morning. He's very excited about the Mars Society program, and the Dr. Zubrin and Hope took the time to come over there under the circumstances. They met in Kiev. Talk about focus, dedicated, and discipline personified. We have someone who's watching our back, and we're so pleased to have that happen. What's coming up? Okay, Red Planet Live. Ashton Zeth, our own astronaut, is going to host Red Planet Live as she does normally on the third Tuesdays of the month, and she'll be having her Red Planet Live podcast at 5 o'clock Pacific time and 8 o'clock Eastern time. Her guest will be Emily Calandrelli. Calandrelli. She's known as the Space Girl. So tune in to find out what that's all about. You'll be surprised. Our International Mars Society Convention is going to be held on October 5th through 8th at the Arizona State University again, wonderful campus. And you will want to be present there for sure. On the first day, right after Dr. Zubrin's keynote address, we're going to have an ambassador recognition, and would certainly like all of you to be standing tall. And we want to know that we really appreciate your service. More on that later. One other item, which maybe James or Ed will talk a little bit about here. The big question is, who is James? What is it? What's his middle name, James? James Kirk. James?
Tiberius.
Tiberius Kirk. I knew I could count on you. All right. The Star Trek convention is going to be in Las Vegas. Volunteers to monitor the booth will be welcomed. And that's from August 3rd to the 8th at the Rio Hotel and Casino. So James or Ed, would you take a couple of minutes to share with us about what you're looking for and how that's going to unfold?
Yeah, I can do that. So we're really looking forward to that event. It's coming up quickly. And Robert will be there. We're doing essentially what we did last year, which was fantastic. Robert is on the schedule to speak with some of the other prominent people in the Star Trek pantheon. And we also, I think there's also one other science speaker, but like some of the other people speaking are amazing. One of the showrunners of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, who also went on to do Battlestar Galactica, and now the new Apple TV show For All Mankind. He's a speaker. So Robert's alongside a lot of really great speakers at this event. It's a pretty large event. They were not at the Rio Hotel last year. They were at the Bally's, but this year they're at the Rio, which is their normal venue. And so it'll be even bigger. And our presence there is also going to be bigger. Instead of, in addition to having a vendor table where we're going to be talking to people and trying to get people signed up as members of the Mars Society, we're also going to have a VR breakout room that was arranged for us. And this is all thanks to the CEO of the company that runs these types of shows. And they do a lot. They're called Creation Entertainment. And they don't just do Star Trek, they do a lot of other TV show conventions around the country. But this is like one of their this is like their flagship show, the Star Trek convention in Vegas. And so we're really excited to have a large presence there. We definitely need volunteers. So if any of you are can come out to Las Vegas, it's a fun place to come to for a few days. Also, you're not gonna have to volunteer the entire time you're here. So so basically, if you wanted to come out and help us out, we'd love to get your help running the table. We'll have shifts of people helping out at the tables and with the VR, and also just people walking around talking to folks and trying to get them to do our activities and then go see Robert talk. So yeah, it's going to be a fun event.
Excellent. I can only imagine. How many people normally attend?
There's several thousand at this event. It's a very large event. And it's kind of like a Comic-Con type of feel. There's people walking around in full costumes that are just amazing costumes too. If you're a fan of Star Trek, you'll see whatever your favorite character is, you'll see people dressed up as that. All the eras that show has. It's a lot of fun.
Excellent. I see a lot of people are jumping on board here. A lot of the people that we know. I see Alain Fremont has come on board, and he is a former scientist for JPL, and he was there for 15 years. He's a epigenetist right now, and he's writing books on all kinds of diseases and the cures for. Welcome, Alain. Good to see you on board. I put together some thoughts on communication. Now, we all recognize that a solid foundation of technology is very important in order for us to get to Mars. But equally important is, and possibly even of greater precedence, or at least mirroring technology, would be the human factor. We're talking humanity here. And I know that we're all human beings and we can all relate to our human experience and we can all share ideas along those lines. And unless we have our human house in order, we're not going anywhere with all the technology or whatever it is. So today is going to be a little bit more about the human element, the human factor, and how we can communicate more effectively, not only as ambassadors of the Mars Society and connect with our audience, but as individuals just walking through our normal daily life activities. Not everyone is an expert in all fields. In fact, I would be hard pressed to find anyone who's an expert in all fields, but we are, as human beings, all experts in the human experience. So we're going to talk about some things that we do each day that will allow us to get a good night's sleep. Sometimes people say, what keeps you up at night? Well, maybe doing some of these things will help you sleep a little more soundly. As a Mars Society ambassador, you're standing before an audience. They'll be listening to your words for sure. But even more powerful than your words are your actions. And here's my stellar dozen that has helped me navigate through my days. You can add to it, delete it, revamp it, whatever it is, but whatever it is that suits you. And my desire is that you take one or all of these ideas with you and make them your own in some way or another. And the beauty of the stellar dozen is that we're all going to interpret this differently because we have different beliefs and different values. So here they are. I have 12, the stellar dozen. Number 1, use common sense. That seems a common thing to say, but common sense is so rare. And often, sometimes don't realize that the simplest solution is often the best way to approach it. Sometimes we make things just a bit too complicated. One of the 2 options would occur, maybe we have 3 or 4 options. There are many ways to reach an end. Some are actually better than others. So I'll leave that in its own place. Some of these will be a little longer, some of these will be a little shorter, but in the interest of time, I'm just going to read the information to you as 1 through 12, and you can take it where it needs to go. Listen is number 2. But not only just listening, we've been born with 2 ears and 1 mouth, but we get that confused sometimes. And that's a problem. I would say listen with concern. Listen behind what you hear the other person feeling. It's very important to do that. When someone asks you, for instance, about your children, what are they wanting you to ask them? Yeah, about their children. When someone asks you what you do for a living, what are they wanting you to ask them what they do for a living? When someone asks you, where are you traveling to this summer or this fall? What are they just waiting for you to ask them where they're going this summer or this fall? My friend Cavett Robert put it this way. He said, people don't care how much you know until you know how much you care. Very wise words. Number 3, this is what I'm working on assiduously. Be patient. Dana is a very good teacher, but I'm a very poor student, I have to say. So when at all possible, count to 10, take a deep breath. Often words spoken in haste will be regretted. Number 4, breathe deeply. Now, Dana and I traveled together. So Dana says, whenever I speak, I lose my brains. So she said, Jim, sit down, take a deep breath, and relax. It does many things when you do that. It brings the oxygen to the brain, and it's a calming and strengthening process. So use it. Number 5, stop complaining. Now, I have a friend, Joe. We used to kid around a lot. I say used to because he did pass away, but he was a great guy. He lived in Milwaukee. And one day I called Joe and I said, Joe, this is Jim in Palm Springs. He said, Jim, am I glad you called? Have I got a cold? I said, Joe, try to imagine how little I care. He said, what? You don't care how I feel? I said, well, I do care, but not that much. He said, well, why not? I said, why should I? He said, Jim, we started high school together. We started the University of Wisconsin together. We started working together. I said, okay, Joe, I care a little bit. What's wrong? He said, I've got a cough in my throat, a scratchy throat. Tomorrow it's going to be in my chest. Now I'll probably have to take Monday off of work. I said, Joe, this is only Friday. You're already taking Monday off. Why do you expect that to happen? He said, it always happens. You think he's expecting something? Yeah, you better believe it. See, Joe follows the papers. I pulled this article out that Joe actually sent me. It says, feeling sluggish lately? Don't blame it on the flu. It said the real thing won't be in town until next month. And it says sometime within the next 30 days, the strains of the flu bug move into the state and cause a high rate of absenteeism in schools and in businesses. Not only are they telling you what you're going to get, they're telling you what you're going to do with it once you get it. You're going to take off of work. You know what the sad thing about this article is? Over 65% of the people who read it are going to come down with the flu. Because they don't understand that just because someone sneezes in your face, you don't have to catch a cold. Just because you walk outside with wet feet and it's cold out there, you don't have to catch a cold. My dogs do it all the time. I mean, we were born at a very early age, folks. And we were taught when we were empty-headed and open-minded that we will, in fact, respond to certain triggers. Look at the work they're doing at National Jewish Hospital in Denver. They say there are allergies and allergens floating around all the time. Do you know what hooks them up? Stress. But you can't take the stress out of the air and put it in your ulcer. You can't take the anxiety out of the air and put it in your mind. You can't even take the love out of the world and put it in your marriage. You have to create it with your beautiful mind. And I would ask you simply to stop complaining. It's very important. Number 6, advice. My friend Joyo says the only time to give advice ever is never. So what am I doing now? I would say maybe rather than giving advice, asking a question might even be better. What would you do in this particular circumstance to resolve this issue, to create a solution? All right, number 7. I love this one. My word is my bond. I jotted down a couple of ideas, not going to read them all, from Miguel Ruiz, who wrote the 4 agreements. And they are: be impeccable with your word, make no assumptions, take nothing personally, and always do your best, which is different from time to time, depending upon how we feel, who we're with, what our attitude is, etc. So I would recommend that book as one you could review. It's very small. It's a good one-night read, and you'll love it. Number 8, speak positively. My daily statement when I get up in the morning, first thing out of my mind would be, everything I need is present and available to me now. Recognize it, I accept it, and I'm thankful. In other words, say what you want, not what you don't want. Talk about what the solution is, not about the problem. Now, Dana and I, actually, having Linda Schweitzer on board reminds me of this. Dana and I went to China, Macau, China. I was giving a lecture to the Wynn hotels in Macau, China. And Linda was the person who put all this program together. Thank you again for that, Linda. It was marvelous. And I really enjoyed being there. Linda is a consultant for the Wynn hotels, actually in Macau and in Las Vegas. So,
no longer Las Vegas, only Macau.
Are you in Macau now, or are you home?
I'm at home in Las Vegas.
Okay, all right. Well, good. Thanks for lightening the load a little bit. That's important. So when I was in Macau, Dan and I walked around a little bit, and I saw signs. We were looking at signs that says "Speak Mandarin." So Dan and I took that phrase and we brought it home. And now when she catches me, or I kind of catch her, which is not as often, where we're maybe not saying something we really mean not to say, one of us will say, "Speak Mandarin." That means speak positive. So Linda, you live with us every day.
Great.
I'm a firm believer that a positive attitude produces positive results, and a negative attitude produces negative results. And the two don't plug into one another. So I believe a positive attitude is extremely important in how we approach the day. Number 9, thoughts are things. That's a hard one to grab sometimes, but what you think about comes about. Choose your thoughts very well and guard them. Henry Van Dyke, I think in the late 1890s or the early 1900s, put it this way. He said, "We create our fortune thought by thought, for so the universe was wrought." He said, "Thought is another name for fate. Choose then your destiny and wait, for love brings love and hate brings hate. And it all operates by law, and there's not that much allowance for ignorance." We've got to know what we have inside, and we've got to know how to get it out. You can either open doors with your mind, or you can close doors with what you think. I'll leave it there. Number 10 of the 12, the SIP principle. SI equals P. Self-image equals performance. whenever you raise the opinion you have of yourself, you raise the level of your performance. Whenever you lower the opinion of yourself, you lower the level of your performance. And again, it's just a common practice. It's a law. And the way you see yourself in life and the way you greet the world is the way the world greets you back. So when you're on stage delivering a Morris presentation, have a good respect for yourself. Don't tell yourself what you can't do. Tell yourself what you can do. Number 11, next to last, life is sixes. I think of Tay Taylor when I think that. Life is sixes, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I was the chief ambassador, the chief pilot at Torrance Aero Center. And we brought Tay on board as a flight instructor. And I learned so quickly, the irony of it all was Tay taught me more about living life than I ever taught him about teaching flying. Napoleon Hill puts it this way. He said, every adversity carries with it the seed of an equivalent benefit. And Newton's law, what rockets operate by, the action and reaction, the third law of motion. For a reaction, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Finally, number 12, do it now. Get your DIN degree, do it now. Procrastination is the enemy of action, and decision is action's friend. Take the most difficult thing that you have scheduled for the day and do it. At least start it. And from then on, everything becomes easier. And you'll know that consciously and psychologically. It'll be a boost for you. To quote my friend Wayne Kirchen, he said, we only have a minute, 60 seconds in it. Do it now. Make it a point to commit to creating one kind act a day. Just one. And you'll find something very interesting happening. Now, don't take my word for any of this. Don't trust me on a thing I said, not a thing at all. Don't trust me at all. Challenge me by experiment. Give it 7 days and watch what happens. And just remember, unless we get our human house in harmony, we're not going anywhere. We have time for comments, questions, insights, criticisms, and your thoughts. I could call on you, and you know I'm very capable of doing this, as Dean Arvidsson knows. So, Dean, what are your thoughts on those points?
They're great points, Jim. Motivational and have a get ourselves on track. Yeah, no, you got it right. That's it. You know, our mental state of mind is key. Our words and actions flow from our mental state of mind, and that to me is part of what you're saying there.
It is. A lot of people don't realize this, but first we think the thought, then we create an image, then we create a feeling of that image, and then we act on it. Everything in the physical world has its origin in the non-physical. I mean, from the chair we're sitting in to the ceiling, the floor, the lights, the walls, everything was but an idea to begin with. And it only stands to reason, at least in my mind, if you want to change anything out there, you've got to change your thinking. So other thoughts, Linda?
I believe, I try to follow the 4 agreements, and this was really good for me to go through those 12 points again, because I think we all need a reminder, and I'm going to ask you to send me the Van Dyke quote. I love that.
Did I see another hand up or another comment here? Otherwise, I'll call on one of you, like possibly.
I have a comment.
Oh, there you go, Connor. Go ahead.
Well, in terms of, we've got some things to resolve here, or we're not going to go anywhere. that was what kind of sold me on let's go to Mars first. Let Mars be our next mission and not asteroids. Because that book, that Mars Society book, Mars Colonies, it discusses a lot of how we might live together in a peaceful society, and discusses some bigger sociological issues that we have to work on first before we settle the red planet. And so I really like the sentiment, you know, again, in all the comments, but that was the, you know, what drew me to the Mars Society and in the beginning.
Excellent. Yeah, we are ambassadors, and we as ambassadors have a distinctive role. We are the hands and feet of the Mars Society. We're out there connecting with the world. I often say, Dan is a former Braniff flight attendant, Braniff International. And I often say, when people fly a plane, they don't remember the pilot. They never remembered me flying the plane. They remember the flight attendants and how they were treated, and the courtesies that they were offered, and the care that they gave them. We as ambassadors are the same. They will remember us, and they will align the Mars Society with how they perceive us and how we feel about ourselves and the confidence we hold inside. That's why I'm making such a strong point of this. Don't get me wrong, we definitely need technology. We ain't going nowhere without technology, but we ain't going nowhere without the human element either. So
Yeah.
the bonding of the two, I think, is very important. Here's Ginger, and maybe I can call on you, Ginger Chen.
Yes.
Give me your thoughts on the human element and how you feel you can approach audiences most effectively.
I think the most important thing is about one word only: why. To figure out and to spread, to disseminate the seeds of why going to Mars or space industry is crucial for future generations is the most important thing. That's why I'm still working on my PhD in STEM education. And I think that to encourage young talents to cultivate themselves in figuring out why they shape their career trajectories is the most important. So my approach is to explore and to their motivations, and to stimulate their motivations in going to Mars or space industry to contribute to this area. That's my thinking.
That's beautiful. And you brought up a point that was in my mind as well. We don't have to have all of the answers. I mean, you're looked upon as an authority standing before the audience as an ambassador for the Mars Society, and that's wonderful. But you don't have to have all of the answers. I always look at the audience and say, you know, there's a lot more intelligence, a lot more knowledge out there in front of me than is before them. So what can I learn from the audience? And I always ask them, how do you feel about this? What points do you have to share with us that we can learn from? Because I think you can learn from anyone. I mean, you can give me a speaker who is the most boring speaker in the world, and I'm sitting down there watching this person. You can learn something from everyone, whatever it is. And the higher on the chain you are of your knowledge, the less we learn, or the less sometimes we feel we can learn. So we never want to place ourselves above someone else. Always look out for the other individuals, what they have to offer and what they have to share and what you can benefit from. All right.
And Jim, also, I feel it's important to get people to think and cause them to be curious and open other doors that maybe, you know, not so much change their thinking, but present ideas to get them to think in a little different manner. that
I like that. Thanks,
cause
Dan.
them to
I like
be
that. It
a little
reminds me
more
of the little
positive.
tea bag. The
Yeah,
tea bag, what do you call this? Tea bag teasers. It says the cure for boredom is curiosity, but there is no cure for curiosity. So that's good. Yes. Be curious, be inquisitive, ask questions,
right.
and listen. And that all was sparked from Ginger. Thank you, Ginger. Who else has, Roger, I see your mind just clicking back and forth, going one way or the other. Share some of that with us.
Well, I think often about Columbus didn't wait until Europe solved all of their problems before sailing over the horizon.
Sure.
But I also think that the New World and many other countries were conquered by the Europeans using guns, germs, and steel, as a really good book pointed out. That's not how we're going to, survive on Mars. We're not going to force it into submission. We're going to have to learn and adapt. And the motivation, and you had us look at that NASA document, which maybe we'll talk about later. The motivations for Europe taking the world were God, gold, and glory. And of course, there's no souls to save or subjugate on Mars. And there's, even if, a kilogram of gold was found on the surface of Mars, it would cost far more to bring back to Earth than the value of the gold elements there. And of course, the glory is the one big thing, but that glory won't keep us alive if the oxygen's running out in our habitat and we haven't done everything else right. So we really do need to have our own house in order, in the sense that we have to solve our problems, personal problems. The people who go to Mars have to have their house in order. I don't think that means we have to wait for Earth to have its house in order, because there's too many monkey brains running around stealing the bananas to ever hope to solve that.
Yes.
Yes.
So
Definitely.
those are some of my thoughts.
Thank you, Roger. Always inspiring. I see Emmanuel is on here, and Roger, you and Emmanuel had a very good conversation the last go around.
He's got a Mars Day event coming up, and we're going to try to connect some of our Canadian bound FMars crew with his students in Ghana on his Mars Day.
Yes, for those of you who are not familiar with FMars, that is Flashline Mars. And we're looking at a very fine connection on July 14th at MDRS up there in Devon Island in the Arctic Ocean and in Africa. So that should be a beautiful experience.
The crew for that expedition up to the Arctic, they have actually just left today. A lot of them are on the way up right now. We're really looking forward to that. That's the first Arctic expedition we've done since 2017. And so very exciting mission. It's our 15th mission up there since 2001 in total. But they're on their way now. And we're going to hopefully have a 2-week science simulation up there this summer. So we're really looking forward to that.
Thank you, James. For those of you who don't know, and I'm sure many of you do, James Burke is our executive director. He is the point person for all that happens in the Mars Society, and he keeps us all on track. He carries a big whip and a big sting, but we tend to respond. No, he's a docile man, but he's a leader with gentle hands.
Servant leader is what I like to call it, for sure.
I'm
definitely the opposite of holding a whip.
Yes. Someone I have not heard from, Chris Senti, give me your thoughts on the human factor regarding technology and how you feel that might be handled. Just off the top of your head, and there's no right, no wrong answers.
Well, sometimes I get frustrated with technology. Sometimes I feel like I want to go back to the old days when things were a lot simpler. But then I look at how I'm doing things now compared to what I did years ago with my business. And if I didn't have the technology, I couldn't do what I'm doing. I really couldn't reach out to people. If I can't go to a particular location, I can do it online. So it's been a learning curve, but I feel that it's very important that technology and the human factor work hand in hand, especially with AI being developed. And, as we get further with AI, I'm using AI now with a lot of my stuff. So I don't know. I just feel it's important that there's a combination of things going on with that. You need, and then the other thing, people have asked me, why do we have to send humans to Mars, or why do we have to send humans back to the moon? And my answer to that is, we can only do so much with a robot. We need to be able to be there to actually touch that object, get that firsthand experience.
Yes. There was an excellent, if you saw it on Sunday evening, an excellent segment on 60 Minutes of artificial intelligence. And they actually created 2 segments out of it. Startling information. If you haven't read anything about ChatGPT and the number 4 version, I encourage you to take a peek at it, because it's not scary. It's concerning, but it's also very rewarding, and can be, if like anything else, if handled properly.
Right.
All right. I'm going to ask Alain Femont, who is up there in Canada, just north of Montreal, to give me just a real quick thought on, because we've talked a lot about the human element and technology, and I know you were a JPL scientist for 15 years. Just share briefly your tie-in with the human element and technology, and how they both are so important.
Thank you, Jim. As you know, I have left JPL for quite a long time now, dedicating myself actually to medical science, and in particular, this last years into the brain, the wonders and the disorders of the brain. My concern with the Mars mission would be how can we physiologically sustain not only just a travel to Mars, which is quite exceptional by itself, but even living there, and under what conditions. On the other hand, technology, and in particular AI, is progressing at such a fast pace that somehow in the future, I can envision a combination of our natural physiology augmented by, let's say, robotic physiology, if you like. And that might be a great help, although this is in a distant future. It seems to me that that should not be foreclosed at this time. We should look into that possibility of, in a sense, augmenting humans as we know them.
Yes.
By robots, just to be very simple. And that can be quite concerning, perhaps distressing, but also fascinating. So I hope that in your considerations on Mars travel and the Mars survival, that you can broaden the horizon, looking forward to the much advanced technologies that are on the horizon, and in particular, advanced AI, with all of the derivatives of it.
Yeah, I agree with you, Alain. I really do. The AI is moving ahead leaps and bounds, and we need to rein it in a little bit and be able to understand it a little bit more, maybe even give it a little more guidance. As you were talking, Alain, I was thinking of James Burke's research with virtual reality and the Tesla robots. James, do you think that VR with the actual robots, not only the rovers, but the actual human-looking robots could be incorporated?
I'm not sure exactly what you're asking, Jim. I mean, we have we have several representations in our VR app of the campus and some of the objects we have within it. So yeah, if you're asking, could we put the Tesla, could we sort of have like a real Tesla bot eventually that also is represented in VR and have some interaction between those two environments as we do with other things now? Yeah, that's definitely possible. We haven't done any of that work yet. Is that what you were asking?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Hi, James, and both James. This is Susan here, Dr. Stu. Hey, James.
Yeah, Susan, answer that one.
Hi, yeah, hi.
Hi.
So expansion of what James Berg and James and I actually we're going to we co-author this white paper on the cybernetic humanoid telepresence teleavatar teleavatar robots. So it is simplistic term is you're able to, with the convergence of these technologies, you're able to quote unquote teleport the human into that robot, right? It doesn't have to be like the humanoid form. For example, we're putting it on a drone and rover, right? But the capability of a remote person, and it doesn't matter for us, we're flying surgeons, because we're in the medical space medicine, but it could be an engineer, it could be a plumber, whatever expert you need in a remote environment. And of course, we're talking about Mars, but here on Earth, then you can quote unquote teleport that individual expert specialist, and it's their humanoid sensorium, I use that term, that is teleported there. So their molecular physical structure is not there. So that would actually eliminate them being exposed to danger of that environment, right? But their presence and their ability with all these technologies to be able to interact in real time, right, with either teams that are in that area or, working on Mars where humans are not there, but we're working with other robots there. But in this case, these are cybernetic. This is like another big field that is really a lot of engineering, robotics, and telepresence that is really coming out, of the research realm. And James helped me write the white paper. We really want to bring that into the space exploration. So maybe James Burke, maybe you can say a few words about that to this group.
Absolutely. What Susan's talking about is the opposite of what I was just saying, which is what I was talking about was in VR. So what we have this, version of our Utah research station in VR. It's like a digital twin, is the technical term. Where if you're going to actually go out to Utah, you could put on a VR headset at home and train and kind of see what it's like in Utah, so that when you get there, you're acclimated. What Susan's talking, and what I was saying is, yeah, we could put the Tesla bot in there so that, you can kind of interact with the Tesla bot, because we have other things that the people that use the VR app interact with, such as flat panel displays that talk about all the procedures of training. And, we have a model of the Perseverance rover, and there's a little info screen next to it that you can look at that talks about the rover mission. But what Susan's talking about is the opposite. It's in the real world, have something like a Tesla bot or medical avatar, cybernetic avatar that a human being is going to interact with in the real world. So you like a Star Trek droid almost, right? And so yeah, that is definitely an emerging area of research that her and I are working on together in the medical field. But also there's definitely applications for Mars exploration. I mean, you can imagine the first crew on Mars having a cybernetic avatar as almost like another crew member to help them out. Now, it's not a crew member, it's a tool. It's not a replacement for
data.
It's a tool. Yeah. Well, it's a proto data, right? Because we're not in 2161 or whatever, we're in 2023. But yeah. But essentially you would have something like this Tesla bot concept, where you can have a robot do basic things, like in the medical field. It would be things like blood pressure monitoring and taking your temperature, some of the things a nurse would do. If you're going to go see a doctor, like that could be automated by a droid, essentially, a cybernetic avatar. And so in the context of a Mars base, you know, when I was just out in Utah back in May and on a 2-week mission, and we, you know, it would be useful for us to have had a cybernetic avatar that we could, that was able to kind of help us with some of the medical experiments that one of our crew members was administering to the other 5 of us, other 6 of us. You know, that would be useful, but other things like repairs, having a cybernetic avatar that could go on EVA with you, that would be tremendously useful, could help you with,
That would be
you know,
marvelous.
sample collection and just
Talk-
kind of
a
be another
talking
pair of
companion.
hands. But then you can take that another step, you know, and how is the cybernetic avatar remote controlled by a human? You know, is it really representing the human in the, you know, that's kind of taking what we're doing with the VR project to another level, where we're trying to have coordinated field science with someone in VR and someone out in the field. Well, imagine the person in VR actually controlling the cybernetic avatar out in the field, instead of it just being like a hologram VR thing. You know, yeah, that would be the next level for sure.
Excellent.
That's
Well,
still a few
May
years
I
off.
interject a comment, Jim?
pardon, pardon, Ellen?
Yes. I think that beyond the concept of an avatar, what they had in mind was a synergy between a human and a robot, not just an avatar, but a synergy where we could actually augment our intellectual capabilities, our physiology in a sense, beyond what it is now, and more adapted to other environments. So it is more than an
Absolutely.
avatar. You have to go beyond the avatar stage.
Absolutely. I mean, the evolution of avatars, the humanoid telepresence avatars, is the actual integration of human computer interface with the human. So, like for example, in the neural chip, right? The neural link
Yes.
with their neural chip, right? That
Yes.
is the very first crude step. But they got FDA approval a couple of months ago to do first clinical trials in this paralyzed patient. So that's moving forward. The integration of the HCI to be able to augment the human, and in this case, we're talking more sort of not just you know, the brain in this particular case of Neuralink. We're talking about the very early where you are integrated with that robot. And remember, it does not have to be the stereotypic thinking of a design of a robot as a humanoid like Tesla, which is fine. That's one way. But what we're doing also is, you're incorporating it into flying drones, rovers, but the capability is the same, the functionality of being able to bring somebody in real time, right? Of course, you know, people will say, oh, but latency, we'll talk, that is always, there's always going to be a challenge, but we keep moving forward. So the future is that you will have the ability to actually work on the surface of the moon. Let's just say that's more realistic in the next 10 years because of the latency, that we can overcome that. Well, we can still overcome a bit of the latency of Mars, because it's between 3 minutes to 20 minutes, depending on, you know, the alignment of the celestial bodies, right? So all I'm saying is the possibility, which was never even, it was an impossible feat, but even to imagine that you can do real-time interaction in a very remote hostile environment. That is what's happening. Sorry, I got my baby, my grandchildren. But anyway, that's kind of where I'm excited. We're doing all this work. We're working with the DoD, the Army, developing this technology, and James Burke is working with me on this area, which is really, really exciting. A lot of funding in this.
Well, the possibilities are certainly limitless, Susan and James. And this is a good place to explore them. I'm going to ask Emma to over in London how Steve and Emma are progressing with their STEM programs, bringing it down to the level of the school systems and presenting those ideas about the human element combined with technology. What are you finding the reception of that to be, Emma?
Thanks, James. Yeah, we're actually, I think we're using technology in a positive way to connect humans and actually make the whole idea of space travel. Mars colonization and having careers in space, it seems completely unachievable to a lot of the youngsters. It sounds like sci-fi, it sounds like something on the films, and it's not necessarily, I feel, down to curiosity or a lack of intelligence maybe, or a lack of exposure. They just feel like, especially in areas that we live in, it's not achievable for them. Maybe they're from poorer backgrounds, maybe they're from just places that don't have highly developed cities or companies working. So what we're doing through e-learning is helping to reach more people and engaging with schools and we've recently been sponsoring a UK space tour. So the UK Space Agency has been running a UK space tour, and actually I could share a link on my, I'll share that in the chat with everybody. But yeah, we were happy to go and join in. So they're actually taking a Launcher 1 rocket around the UK from the failed Virgin Orbit escapade earlier in the year, but they're trying to show children all around the country and the general public, to be honest, that, you know, this is here, this is even here in the UK, the industry is growing, and you can actually reach out and you can touch something like this, you know, it's achievable. So we developed, we've actually got a website out now, completely accessible, completely for free, to the general public to support the UK space tour, but also a Cardiff Space Academy that we recently went to in person. And what you'll see from this website that I've just put into the chat is a website we've put out there to try and engage, try and attract and enthuse kids to say, okay, what is this? It looks bright, it looks exciting, let's have a look, it's fun. And behind this, they can access e-learning to show them that there are, what we're trying to do is get across that there are things to learn about Mars and space, but also that it's accessible, which we're trying to sort of come out to these events in person and use technology like this to interest and attract children, but show them that, you know, it's achievable. And that's the human element, I think, is helping them understand it is accessible. You don't have to work on a rocket. You don't have to work on, you know, really complicated or technical things. You can be doing very human jobs and furthering the whole space development effort. So that's the whole goal from it all.
That's excellent, Emma. Thank you so much for sharing that. As long as we're in London, let's go to Steve Wyatt here just for a minute. Steve, how are you progressing with the spacesuit concept of walking into the room, and have you had a chance to practice with that a little bit?
Well, I haven't actually done a live show yet. I've had a practice in front of my family. They seem to find it very interesting. I think it's the entrance that gets everybody's attention. And
yes, very much so.
I've still got to perfect getting out of the suit so that I can do the talk, because doing the talk in the suit is not very practical, but it certainly makes an impact when I walk in. And it's been a lot of fun getting there. And surprisingly, it hasn't cost me very much to actually get to that stage either. I think I've probably only spent about, what, $50, really. Most of this stuff has come out of my workshop, stuff that I was going to have to throw away probably, but I've managed to adapt it and make it useful, and I'm looking forward to the first talk. But no, I haven't quite got there yet. I'm thinking of number 12, which is do it now. And so I'm working towards getting it done pretty soon, because we're running out of time as well, because the end of the school year is coming up very soon.
Yes.
Steve, congratulations on what you've achieved so far. I'm sure you probably thought of this in order to make the impression. Maybe you could have someone else wear the uniform, model it for a few minutes, and they could exit while you give your program. So you don't have to get out of the suit.
That's a good idea. And I've been looking at my 19-year-old son as a target for that.
Okay.
Yes, it's a good idea and a strong possibility.
Excellent.
He did kind of run in the opposite direction when I mentioned it, but I'm working on it.
Thank you. Well, thank you all for this.
Assign a volunteer to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know the kids that I'll be talking to, they'd want to put the spacesuit on. That will be their main goal, I should think, of the evening. But of course, they're
Yeah.
going to be too small.
Yeah, Steve sent me a video of this and it's wonderful. I really enjoyed seeing it. And it certainly does make an impression, but I like your idea, Dana, also. It could be not a Steve standalone. He could be a proxy inside there. We have about less than 1 minute left. Any urgent news you need to share in 30 seconds to a minute? Any thoughts that we haven't covered? We didn't cover the Moon to Mars NASA mission. We'll have to cover that at some other time, but if there are no other thoughts, Roger?
My quick thought about that is the document is a mess. It doesn't really get us to Mars. What we need to get to Mars is a Mercury, Gemini, Apollo type program where we live and work maybe close to the Earth, but for long periods. Then we get out to Mars, but maybe not land. Perhaps we operate our cybernetic avatars from orbit. And then the actual Apollo phase where we land on Mars and stay. I think that could be improved on.
It could very well, and certainly deserves some consideration. I'd like to have that as a topic sometime. Mark your calendar for next month. Thanks for tuning in today. We're going to have a guest speaker next month. He is the lead astronomer of the Rancho Mirage Public Library and Observatory. And Eric will be talking about how to make your talks about Mars, the planets, and the solar system very thought-provoking and captivating. So, same time, same station, if you will, and mark your calendar for the second Tuesday of the month. Until then, on to Mars. Thanks for tuning in.